Passing through the dream to the other side. I brought this collection of short stories out in 2008 in response to the invasion of Iraq. It consists of 8 short stories, and they blend 2 worldviews, that of our material world and that of the spiritual world. And they cover a variety of cultures and topics. So the titles of the stories that are available are Rumsfeld's Return, Being on Time, Chubsy and the Rose of Qamsar, Atsumori, The Ink of the Scholar, The Beauty of the Banlieue, New Civilization, The Prophet's Birthday. Rumsfeld's Return is a kind of mind experiment. So I was inspired to write this. I wrote it in one day, where I was thinking of those who had invaded Iraq, that they knew nothing about its culture or its history. And I wanted to imagine what it would be like if they started to see Iraq and its history, and also Islam and its culture, not from the outside, but from the inside. And so this is a story where Donald Rumsfeld goes missing and turns up quite a different person from how he set out. So I will just read the first couple of paragraphs. Nobody knew what had happened to the plane. There was no evidence of it having been shot down. It had simply disappeared off the radar on its way back to Washington, with Donald Rumsfeld in it. The last place it had been detected was over Siwa, the western desert of Egypt. Then after that it had vanished from the flight controller's screens. Of course, today it was big news. Everybody was panicking, puzzled, not sure what to do. There were rumblings in Washington that perhaps Cairo should be carpet-bombed, as a way of persuading any potential militants to own up. Wiping out faceless brown people was always a satisfying, if short-term, panacea for the outrage that anyone should dare to touch the temporal rulers of the material realm. However, there were also rumours that Rumsfeld had simply had enough. Or rather, he had become bored. Even after more than 500,000 Iraqi deaths caused by sanctions, war, etc., those damn Arabs were still being ungrateful for having been saved. When were they ever going to be beaten into submission and gratitude? But more importantly, when were the oil revenues going to start trickling into his bank accounts? So this is the opening line of Rumsfeld's Return. And the return is more than just about his return back to the States. It's also a return back to himself in some sense. So that's Rumsfeld's Return. And the next one is Being on Time. This is just a story about a writer and an academic who's trying to cultivate a perfect image in the world, a perfect reputation. But when a man appears in his hotel room, having transported across time and space, he is confronted not only with his own past, but with the past of his grandfather as well. And this story is really about exactly that, the construction of our external selves versus the truth of what we hide. So the opening to this is Being on Time. And he calls his work Being on Time, which of course you will recognize from existentialist works of Heidegger and Sartre, Being and Time. This is a kind of a play on that title. Maurice de Joux had been working on his masterpiece for about 17 years. This was the work that would make his name. he had decided to call it Being on Time. It was a postmodern amalgamation of transcendental phenomenology, existentialism, and deconstructionism. These were no longer the days of Heidegger and Sartre. These were the days of M.C. Solar and Matthew Kassovitz. In other words, philosophy was no longer at the Sorbonne. It had dispersed into the streets, mixing with an assortment of historical fragments, which Maurice liked to call fragments of time. In order to be able to have some peace and finish his project, Maurice was spending his sabbatical in London, West Hampstead to be precise, that charming corner of the city where one could still go to a cafe for a civilized cup of coffee and a read of the papers before commencing work. Of course, he had noticed that it was only a 5-minute cab ride from there to the not-so-salubrious Kilburn High Road. Its multitude of tat-filled shops bursting with crowds from every corner of the world made him frown with consternation, if not fascination. It was a side of life he preferred not to see, cheap, garishly coloured imported goods for those who could not afford more. It was also a symbol of an age in which the social and economic order had, in his opinion, gone tragically awry, threatening the very substance of existence. So that's the opening couple of paragraphs to Being on Time, and I'll just read one more, which is Atsumori. Atsumori is one of my favourite Japanese no plays, and if you want to find out more about it, you can look it up. And I based the story on the plot of the no play itself. I did some kind of embellishments on it. And this again is really about moments of reflection. There is a soldier who is called Kumagai, and there's a moment in which he has some kind of awakening and he changes his life. So this is how it starts. This story continues the great tradition which began in Japan in the 12th century of telling about a series of particular events whose hero was named Atsumori. It haunts me to this day as it has haunted generations, but I will leave it to Renshaw to tell, as he was there when it happened. If you awaken from the dream that is this world, you will know what is real. Ah, you're wondering who I am and why I carry this rosary in my hand. I am, in fact, the one who killed Atsumori. He was the same age as my own son, but I had to kill him, as our two clans were at war. Before I became a monk, I was one of the best soldiers of the Minamoto clan. Then my name was Kumagai. I was from the province of Musashi, to the east of Miyako, the splendid capital city of my country, today known as Kyoto. Atsumori was of the Heike, who ruled in Miyako. They were wealthy and, of course, very cultured. They practiced poetry and commissioned great works of art. They built palaces and temples and expanded the borders of the city. The mansions of their aristocrats lined the streets. But they did not know how much they were hated. Yes, they were hated, because they were proud. They were arrogant, oppressing the farmers and craftsmen, demanding impossible taxes, ignoring the distant villages that suffered in time of a bad harvest. They thought about nobody except ourselves. We had the backing of the people when we decided to attack. Our army was well organized. We all thought as one. I only cared about my mission, filling my orders, and of the triumph that would follow. We knew we were going to win. The Heike had been warned of our attack as a courtesy so that the women and children could leave Miyako first. But they did not take us seriously for some reason, perhaps because of their intoxication with power, or perhaps they thought we were just a barbaric people from the east, and that they would easily be able to fend us off. So this is another extract, and If you would like to hear more about this collection of short stories, do leave a comment under the video, and I hope you like it, and do feel free to buy it and read it and share it. Thank you very much.